Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 7-Minute Workshop, during which we chat with experts to break down topics that are complicated or timely and that affect your business. And we do it in just 7 minutes. That is a lot less time than it takes to get a drone delivery of my new fall jacket. That's right. And speaking of that, we are officially moving on to a new theme for our 7-Minute Workshop this month. And it's something I know a lot of you have been thinking about, preparing for the 2021 holiday season. To dive into this important topic, we're going to be joined by NetSuite experts Allison Auclair, who's the VP of Product Management, and Abby Jenkins, our Product Marketing Manager. That's right, we've got two guests for the price of one. Now for today's topic, as the business environment continues to change, companies continue to face delays in their supply chains, and we're going to discuss how to plan for the unexpected, diving into priorities and mitigation measures, supply allocation, and most importantly, customer communication. Now, a quick reminder before we get started, if you have any questions throughout the discussion, you can ask them in the comments, and we'll get to them at the end of the conversation. Don't forget to tell us where you're tuning in from. We know you've signed in from all parts of the world, and we'd love to give you a shout out right back. Also, feel free to tell us how your company is preparing for the holidays. What are you expecting? As good as last year? Better? Worse? How will you deal with supply chain disruptions? How are you being transparent with your customers? We want to hear it all. Okay, please join me in welcoming Allison Auclair and Abby Jenkins. Hi, Allison. Hi, Abby. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Fritz. Hi, everybody. Great to be here.
Hi, Fritz. Nice to see you again.
I'm actually in a different location than I normally am. I'm in Washington, D.C. Where are you guys tuning in from, Abby?
I'm in Denver, Colorado.
And Allison?
And I'm in Boston.
All right. We're all over the United States today. Hopefully everybody else chiming in tells us where they're from. We're going to get started with Abby. When do companies begin their holiday season preparation usually? And where are they right now, more or less, do you think?
Yeah, many businesses begin planning for the holidays actually as early as April. For those who are offering a special edition product or holiday packaging, they're really going to start that planning in the spring. So it's going to be very important for them to be able to have accurate forecasting for those items that are only going to be desirable for a short amount of time. So outside of special edition packaging, businesses can expect up to about 25% of their annual sales to come during the holidays. So it's very important for them that the items that are forecasted are ready to go so that they're able to deliver these orders as expected. So manufacturers will want to have their holiday items on the shelves ready to start that busy season in November, which means that shipping is actually going to be happening within the month. So right now is really crunch time for many businesses as they're busy producing product to get it ready to get out the door. At the same time, they're likely planning and replanning for what to expect this year during the holidays, and what that might look like with the ever-changing COVID situation and now with the Delta variant. So businesses are trying to anticipate what shopper preferences will be and then adjust their plans accordingly. Likely, as they were forecasting earlier in the summer, they were planning to see a lot more in store shopping than they did last year. However, now things may be looking a little different, and they're probably looking at some of that stock that is planned for in store and coming up with contingency plans. What if the shoppers don't show up? How are we going to be able to meet shoppers where they are, and how do we use this inventory that's sitting in the store and make sure that it gets out the door and into customers' hands?
And Abby, what's part of the preparation and planning that went into this holiday season?
Yeah, so after businesses have a forecast, they really need to back into how they're going to make that happen, which is their supply plan. So what I mean is they need to be able to take that forecast for the finished good and then figure out what they need and when they need it to be able to have the finished goods available when they need it. So this process has already happened for the holiday season. As I mentioned, POs have already been cut and raw materials and components are hopefully already in-house. However, due to the ongoing supply chain disruptions that many businesses are finding themselves in, suppliers may not be able to fulfill their orders in full, or things may have been delayed due to shipping delays or otherwise. And so that's where we're seeing businesses really start to say, okay, how are we going to handle the holidays with less stock than we thought we were going to have? At the same time, we see many businesses are constrained for cash this year. The last year and a half obviously has been hard on many businesses, and the holidays make up such a chunk of their annual sales that it's really make it or break it for many businesses. So companies are really in the situation where they need to evaluate how much product do they have and what orders are out there, and how are they going to intelligently determine which orders to fulfill if they are in a situation where they can't fulfill all of them. So businesses that are able to use facts and data to answer these questions, I mean, those businesses that have the ability to say these orders will generate the most profitability for our business are the ones that are going to be most successful.
We have a couple shout outs. Augustine from Woodbridge, Virginia, very nearby where I am, and Nanette from Toledo, Ohio. Welcome and thank you for jumping into the comments there. Allison, Abby just talked about make or break, and for businesses that are kind of panicking right now because of all of the changes, what are some quick tips for starting the preparation?
Yeah, the key thing is not to panic, to take a deep breath, because as Abby said, a lot of decisions have been made, but there is still time to tweak, time to adapt, and most importantly, time to think through plans B, C, and maybe even D. You do your best to plan, to make a plan up front of what you think your demand will be, what you think you need, how you think you're going to get all of your supply. And then life happens, like things happen. Tankers get stuck in canals or transportation shortages happen. And so it's really important to think about what will you do if these things happen and to have a strategy in place. So if you find that you don't have as much supply as you thought, what are your options? Do you have ways to find additional supply or not? If you do, great. If not, you need to think about how are you going to adjust in dealing with your demand for that. So how are you going to prioritize? What are the most important orders to fill? What changes might you make in your strategy to meet demand so that you can be successful for your holiday season?
We have another shout out, a good evening from Gothenburg, Sweden. I think not sure if that's a first for Sweden, could be, but welcome nonetheless. Allison, we're seeing a lot of disruptions. We've kind of mentioned them a little bit here. The surge of the Delta variant of COVID, of course, the labor shortage, and some of the things you just alluded to, transportation and shipping issues. So what can businesses actually do about those right now?
So to me, there are really three key tenets to think about: visibility, mitigation, and communication. So first, get the best visibility you can to what's happening. And Abby alluded to this in the earlier question. Make sure that you keep tabs as closely as you can on both your supply, what's your current inventory, what are your purchase order statuses, what's the transportation status, as well as any sort of changing demand forecast. Maybe be mocking up what you think will happen. Do you think things will change based on your initial assumptions that you had? Mitigation is the next key thing, right? So those plans B, C, and D. Having strategies in place to know what happens if your supply changes or your demand changes from what you thought would happen. So consider, for example, configuring some strategies within your supply allocation system so that you think about, well, what if scenarios, if this gets delayed, how would I think about it? if this demand is different than I thought, how would I think about it? So then when those happen to you, it's not such a surprise. You already have plans in place to think about how you're going to adjust. For example, maybe it's focusing on certain customer segments. Maybe certain products, you're not going to do as many promotions as you typically would because you're constrained on your supply. So there are different things that you can do to both impact supply and demand, and thinking through those options is really important. And then finally, and I think most importantly, communication. So setting expectations and then communicating when you need to change those expectations is key. You should do your best to get that right up front, because we all know that customer disappointment is one of the key things that make you lose a customer, and you want to keep that business and have repeat sales ongoing. So do your best to communicate the best that you can up front, but when things do change, let people know. Right. So the best thing that you can do, even if you have to disappoint a customer, is to proactively communicate and give them as much notice as possible so that they can make other plans. I had a recent experience where I placed an order. It happened to be something for work and thought it was in stock. They didn't tell me it wasn't in stock, and I'm waiting and it said my order was confirmed and it's not shipping, and I'm trying to get information about that order, and was really frustrated that they didn't tell me, oh, the supply is constrained and we don't know when it's coming in. Like, that's not a good way to communicate. If you don't know up front, let customers know that there's uncertainty. Or if you thought there was certainty and then you find out it's different, just communicate. Customers will really appreciate that. And that can be the key in saving a relationship, even if you have to disappoint some people.
Well, I think that's some really good advice. Thank you, Allison, for that. We're going to, we've kind of run out of our 7 minutes. We're going to open it up to some questions from the audience. For those of you tuning in, if you have questions, keep commenting, keep shouting out. We'll do our best to say hello and answer as many of the questions that you ask throughout the remainder of our time. Our first question is from Sean in Connecticut. If I'm unable, Abby, this one's for you, if I'm unable to fulfill some orders, what are some ways I can make this an enjoyable experience in the long run, kind of hearkening to what Allison just said, to make sure that my customers come back?
Yeah, I think that Allison hit on a lot of important points just a minute ago, but unfortunately, this is a reality for many businesses this year, and it's totally out of their control. So I think what's most important is when businesses find themselves in this situation, they need to communicate to the customer early, and they need to set expectations that they aren't going to be able to deliver what they've promised. And that's the most important. Don't wait and let them know that there's a problem until the very last minute, when you know that shoppers are stressed out around the holidays anyway. And even though it's not what customers want to hear, if you communicate early and clearly, then the customer will have a positive experience, even though you're delivering bad news to them. And they're likely to make a future purchase down the road. But if the experience is really poor and there's no communication and the product just doesn't arrive as they have expected, and now, it's too late for them to go on to their plan B or plan C, they're really going to have a bad taste in their mouth, and they'll be less likely to engage for future purchases. So aside from that, I think if there's a like product that you could offer as a second option, that might be a way to save the sale and keep the customer engaged. And some businesses might want to offer a discount for their product when it does become available. Again, I kind of say that one carefully because so many businesses are constrained for cash right now that they really need to understand the financial impact of promotions before they offer them to the customer. I don't think that that's necessary for the customer to have a positive experience in this situation.
Okay, our next question, Allison, is from Jay in Los Angeles. What are some insights that we might have learned from the 2020 holiday season? A very online holiday season, I might add.
Yes, it was. And I think the first thing we can learn is not to underestimate how important the e-commerce channel is. We saw, because of the situations we had globally, people flocking to e-commerce. And I don't think that we expect that to significantly change this year. As Abby mentioned earlier, the prediction was sort of maybe more in-store than we saw last year. And that may be the case, but given everything that's happening with the new variants, we may actually see a repeat of last year. So be prepared to see those spikes, maybe higher than what you would have expected before. And also think about options to for omnichannel fulfillment that can help you give customers that non-contact type of option. So whether it's store pickup or curbside pickup or delivery, make sure that you've got alternatives for them in place for those people that aren't comfortable going into the store so that you can still get that sale.
Allison, another question is, this is a very obviously NetSuite-centric question, but how does NetSuite help adjust in real time? I think one of the things you talked about was supply allocation and making those tough decisions. That's one area, right? Maybe expand on that and maybe some other areas that we help in.
Yep, absolutely. So supply allocation is certainly one. So with the new supply allocation capabilities released a couple of releases ago, you have the ability to configure different strategies, and it will automatically keep track of how you're using your inventory, how your demand is changing, and alert you to situations where you might have a mismatch in supply and demand. And not only that, it also gives you proposed alternatives. Like, here's some ways based on the rules and the priorities that you've configured that you might address the situation. So really helps you feel empowered to figure out and provides you more intelligence in helping to figure out what to do. Now, the other thing is that flexibility of different kind of fulfillment options. So we talked about how important that was in the previous question, being able to quickly, turn that on, turn one off, right? Have, store pickup fulfillment. Oh, now I need to do curbside because it seems like people aren't shopping as much. That agility to switch your features and enable things really fast will help you to be more proactive in responding to what happens.
Yeah, that agility is obviously going to be key for some time to come. We have another shout out, Amjad, who says hello from Istanbul, Turkey. I met one of your fellow country people yesterday here in DC, and great to have you. And then we got a little shout out from Veronica, who reiterates that communication is key. And I think that's something you both stress. And I think that is actually a good way to wrap this up today. So thank you so much for joining us, Abby and Allison. It was great to have you.
It was great to be here.
Thanks, Fritz. We'll see you again soon.
Okay, as always, a big thanks to all of you for tuning in. We'll be back with Abby and Allison again next week to discuss meeting your customers where they are, talk about communication, and creating omni-channel commerce success. That's happening next Tuesday, September 21st at 12:30 Pacific time. We'll see you then.